how you fuckers identify yourselves, what words you use to define yourselves. Doesn't matter what a dog thinks. Does man consider the understanding of itself of a dog in order to designate it as a canine? Doesn't matter what a pedophile defines himself as. It's the behavior, the act. You are fucking infected with Judaism, with Abrahamism. The word comes true first. The word is paramount. No, that's not the word, it's the act. The act determines the word. Whether a Jew defined himself as a Jew prior to 1070 or not doesn't matter. His worldview was the same before Christ was born, when Christ was crucified. Doesn't matter if a Nazi defines himself as a Democrat. Isn't his behavior that determines how we define him? Doesn't matter if a cow defines itself as a goat, if it could speak. No, it doesn't matter, because it's the behavior, the pattern of its behavior, of its activities, that determines what we call them. It's not when they accept a term. It's not when Christianity accepted the term Christian. Their behavior, their worldview, their attitude, their demeanor, that's what defined them as Christian. Not whether or not they accepted, they acknowledged the term. It was irrelevant, inconsequential. If a retard accepts the term retard, doesn't matter. If he's retarded, it's determined by his actions, by his mode of thinking, by his behavior. It's not determined by his acceptance of the term. His acceptance of the term does not matter to the slightest. This is where the whole confusion with transsexuality comes from. It doesn't matter if transsexuals accept the term masculine or feminine. Doesn't mean anything if a male accepts the term masculine or maleness. He is a male whether he likes it or not, whether he acknowledges it, accepts it or not. It's not nothing to do with your acceptance, your acknowledgement. Whether you accept a term, whether you accept a term to define yourself as such. It's inconsequential, irrelevant. This is why I say a superior mind can know an inferior mind more than it can know itself. Not because it cannot know itself. It might be a coward. It might be ill. It might have some other issues which prevents it from acknowledging its self-awareness. So its self-awareness does not matter. Its behavior matters. That's why when we define words, we refer not to what it is said, what is acknowledged, but it refers to the act, to what is acted, to a behavior, a pattern, to precedent. You can call yourself a genius. Doesn't matter what you call yourself or what you think about yourself. You can call yourself moral or good. Doesn't matter what you call you. An ideal, a judgment call refers to an ideal. The ideal is fixed. How much you adhere to this ideal is up to you. If you don't adhere to this ideal, this concept, this objective, it doesn't matter what kind of words you use to define yourself. If you don't adhere to it as it is defined, you are not it. You can call yourself a cat, a feline. Doesn't matter if you consider yourself. You can believe it in your heart of hearts. You can act. You can start pretending, imitating feline behavior. Doesn't matter. Because when you define yourself, when you define the concept of feline in an objective manner, doesn't matter what the individual calls himself or how he accepts or rejects this definition. This definition is objective. It refers to behavioral patterns. So whether or not the Pharisees were consider themselves Jews or not, call themselves Jews or not, does not matter. Their worldview was what became Judaism. Before there was a Judaism, they were Jews. Before Judaism created a set of rules, dogmas, 10 commandments, whatever it was, before that even occurred, there was a worldview that was Judaic. The concept of pedophilia refers to specific behaviors. Whether the pedophile acknowledges them or not is insignificant. What is significant is that the definition referred to natural processes, to objective standards, not to ideological standards, but to objective natural standards. So in the case of pedophilia, it's not just a number, 14, 15, 17, 18, whatever it might be within each culture, each civilization, doesn't matter. It's about when a female, especially a female, has her first period, when a female can get pregnant. That's the standard, especially in regards to human civilizations, because the female determines the fate of a civilization. That's why the female is a genetic and mimetic filter, a filtering agency. That's her power, that's her value. Her entire value is comprised in her sexual role. So when we speak about a range, we don't mean there's infinite amount of genders. No, there's infinite amounts, degrees of a reproductive probability. That's what it means, the range. So if a female is more masculine, that means her probability of procreating is decreased. And if a male is more feminine, then his probability, his potential of reproducing is reduced. That's all it means. It doesn't mean we have to invent new genders, new categories to accommodate these variances, these mutations. It just means that these mutations are unfit, and the term unfit is determined by biological standards. So what determines whether or not a female, especially a female, or a male is mature or not is whether or not he can procreate, he can reproduce, he can bear offspring. That's the natural standard. Now the psychological matter is completely irrelevant and inconsequential, and it's a side matter. And this is why paternalism is so significant, because it sets up the conditions in which a immature or not yet fully mature male or female can be gradually integrated, assimilated, prepared for its role. That's why the teenage years are so disruptive, so traumatic, because it is the period of time where an individual, both female and male, comes to terms with its biological and social roles. And this is a hard thing to accept, especially when you're an infant and you think you're going to be an infant for the rest of your life, and that you can express yourself freely forever. And that's not the case. When you become a teenager, you realize that you cannot be yourself. You have to accept a role, a social role, a biological role. And this might be sad for many, but that's just reality. All human categories refer to ranges of probability, not to absolutes. Ranges, behavioral, action ranges, potential for actions. That's what they refer to. All human categories refer to ranges, referring and deferring to an objective. In the case of masculine and feminine, these are biological objectives. The objective is reproduction. In the case of political ranges categories, they refer to political success, the ability to seduce, coerce, or bribe the populace. I'm using Doolittle's three categories of control: seduction, coercion, bribery. In the case of spiritual categories, Judaism, Arianism, Christian, Muslim, I am also referring to political, the effect on the populace, their ability to rile up the populace. This does not automatically translate to success in the real world, because the real world doesn't give a shit, a flying fuck, what human beings believe. This is why I said nihilism must always contradict itself in order for it to survive. If it does not contradict itself, it perishes. Take Christianity as an example. If Christianity adheres to its own values, its own principles, it dies. This turning the other cheek, that's a death sentence right there. So it must always contradict itself and come up with justifications why it contradicts itself. In Christianity's case, it's the excuse that all human beings are sinful. That means no human being can ever attain the stated ideal. We are all inferior in reference to this perfection, right? This creates another psychological issue that is a matter of controlling the populace, that is seeding insecurity. But that's another issue. This is intentional, because if you seed insecurity in a population, it makes it more malleable, more controllable. This is why in nihilistic dogmas, the ideal is always unrealizable. No mortal being can ever realize nihilistic ideals. That maintains a sense of insecurity, of inferiority, in reference to the ideal, which is always supernatural, that is unrealistic. And this is by intent. It is so. It is intentional. This to cultivate the sense of insecurity, of inferiority. What I'm saying is that identity does not depend on the acknowledgement of the identity. It doesn't matter if a dog acknowledges its canine identity. Doesn't matter if a pedophile acknowledges himself as a pedophile. Doesn't matter if a Jew defined himself as Jewish prior to 1070 AD. When he practiced Judaism before that, when he practiced the tenets of Judaism before it was even called Judaism, it doesn't matter if he acknowledged and defined himself as a Jew. He was a Jew before there was even a Judaism. That's what it means to have an objective standard that is independent from subjective opinions. And it is nature that determines what is objective and what is not objective. For instance, when I say nihilism, I don't care what a nihilist thinks of himself. My standards are objective. I use reality as my basis, as my foundation. And then I judge all worldviews, all perspectives, all ideologies, all dogmas in accordance to this independently verifiable, perceptible experience standard. And it's called nature. And nature is indifferent to human contrivances, human categories.